Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I wanted to start with this. It's going to be another greetings in a moment because I forgot I wanted to start with this. So this is the one of the trailers from the HBO show Dune Prophecy, which is from the Frank Herbert Dune books.
Humanity's greatest weapon is the lie. We lie to our friends.
We lie to our friends.
We lie to our enemies. We lie to ourselves. We are unreliable.
So Louis C.K. does a comedy bit where he's trying to talk his daughter out of lying. He says, "How do you explain to your kids that not to do something that makes everything easier and better?" Right? And there's the Ricky Gervais movie, which is kind of interesting, called The Invention of Lying. My wife and I just watched the Three Body Problem on Netflix. And if you get beyond the feminist agenda and the woke culture stuff, it's kind of interesting and a well done show. And I'm not going to, I don't want to spoiler alert too much of it, but there's a point where it involves aliens, and the aliens are a human is explaining to them about lying, and they don't know how to lie, right? Which there's a plot flaw because they do some things which show that they know how to lie. Like they don't even understand the idea of a fictional story. These deceptions, right? And so much of our culture is deception. Like things that people might not even consider lies or deception, like a TV show or a movie. That's all lie and all deception. It's illusionary. It's an illusion. It's not real. It's fake. And so much of the things that we do in terms of, creating an idea of something that it isn't, that isn't that, like what people do on social media. Like people are creating an illusion on social media, right? I mean, this, what you're listening to in itself is a lie because it's not my voice. It's a replica. It's a reproduction of my voice in digital format. And it's not my real voice. These are not real pictures. This is not real anything. Like when you look at a screen, it is it's a replica of reality. Even if it's a picture of something real or a video of something real that happened, it's still not the real thing. It's a replica. It's a lie. It's an illusion, right? It's something that's false. So if you took away all the things that are deceptive, it probably, there has some deception in it. It would probably make up the majority of our system. like pretty much everything that we have and what we do has deception woven in it. And of course, the three-dimensional world is an illusion in itself. It's not what we think it is. It feels real, but it's not, and it's not what we are in the sense of our souls. It's a reflection of our souls. Our souls create our bodies, but our bodies aren't our souls, right? And so our personality and our egos and whatever we think and say and do is an illusion and a perversion of our natural pure soul existence, right? And so there's so much deception here. Like when people say I'm searching for the truth, it's just not possible. When you're saying you're a truth seeker, really what you're saying is I want a little bit more truth than what I have. But most people wouldn't want to give up all of the deceptions that are out there because of all the things I just said. It's dinner time. I'm a little bit tired here, so I'm going to, I think there's some more things I want to say about this, and I'll probably conclude this at the end of the video. I think I want to say something about, I had sort of this awareness of my high school days and, in the present tense. I want to talk about these things. I'll do it at the end of the video. But anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today, Saturday, November 23rd. I did a 2-hour voiceover today, which is going to be a Thanksgiving Day special video. It's not cheery by any means, but it's not, it's called When It's Thanksgiving and You're the Turkey. And so that'll be coming out. So I'm not going to do much today. I have another video I just made public, and I have another one that's going to go up tomorrow, Sunday, or Monday. So I'm kind of way ahead of the game here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work this afternoon and then a little bit of work on Sunday. And then I'm going to take, I'm going to slow it down and do less work and do other little projects and things. But anyways, I turned on the news this morning, and they were covering how Trump is pointing all these 2025 MNFers, which is just like so stupid. So let's start here.
Most consequential is this man, Russell Vogt. He's the co-author of, hope you're sitting down for this, Project 2025. He's going to lead the Office of Management and Budget. It was only a few months ago when Project 2025 was so toxic to the Trump's presidential bid that he and the members of his campaign were forced to deny any connection to it repeatedly. In July, Trump himself posted on Truth Social, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them."
So you guys who watched my election coverage and when this happened and throughout it, I talked about how stupid 2025 was. It made no sense at all. They were hiring for people for governmental positions, doing interviews, back during the summer. And they put out all these videos and things like they were already running Trump's victory lap, which you never do. Like it just was stupid. And it was used against Trump in every possible way. So much so that Trump had to deny it. And there was no advantage to doing this. Like the people who would be inspired by 2025 were already really big Trump supporters. It wasn't going to win people over. It wasn't going to win independent voters in swing states or something like that. And it was used as a weapon against Trump. So it seemed like it was just some sort of a hit piece from people in the, some sort of like FBI or intelligence community hit piece to undermine Trump's credibility because it was clearly not, it didn't benefit Trump at all. But now he's embracing it. And, I don't know why he would ever be a part of it because it was stupid. But if he was, it's just really stupid. But now he's embracing it. And, he could still hire and do some of the things in Project 2025, which he certainly will because some of those things were his actual plan or the part of, Trumpisms, right, in Trump world. But hiring people that were related to it is just stupid. Because, there's already going to be pushback, and you want to go in as smoothly as possible. Like, you should just do things in a way where there's some stealth, but he's not doing that at all. Like, he's learned nothing, because it's, there's going to be already, there's going to be opposition to Trump no matter what. And so you could do things just in a more subtle way. Like, just don't be a dick about everything. It's kind of funny. I think it's funny, but, because I like the liberal meltdown like the rest of you do. But, that aside, it's just stupid for him to embrace this thing.
Well, that politically expedient lie was repeated by Trump campaign officials so that the deeply unpopular Project 2025 wouldn't derail Trump's presidential campaign. But now that Trump has been elected, he's freely appointing the architects of Project 2025, people who already have deep ties to Trump, to key cabinet-level posts. Case in point, the aforementioned Russell Vogt, who was just announced last night as Trump's pick to be the director of the Office of Management and Budget, a role that he held in the first Trump administration. Vogt is a prominent Christian nationalist. He's considered a lead architect of Project 2025. He's the author of one of its key chapters, Chapter 2, about how to enhance the powers of the executive office, in large part by dismantling the administrative state, slashing budgets, and eliminating the independence of certain regulatory agencies. He's also been in charge of preparing a secretive playbook for the first 180 days of Trump's second term, which involves overseeing executive orders that the incoming administration could begin to implement on day one. All of those plans are in service of making the powers of the presidency yet stronger and more centralized, and it has earned Vogt the backing of Trump and some of his staunchest allies. Stephen Miller praised Vogt as a transformative pick for OMB director. He also described Vogt as, quote, the guy for the last 4 years who's been developing the plan to take down the deep state. Miller, as you know, is another supporter of Project 2025 who's set to join the incoming administration. This time, he's going to be the deputy chief of staff for policy and as Trump's Homeland Security advisor. A group that Miller founded, it's called America First Legal, served on Project 2025's advisory board before it jumped ship this summer when the public began closely scrutinizing Project 2025. Besides Vogt and Miller, a handful of other key Project 2025 figures have been chosen by Trump to join his administration. There's Brendan Carr, Trump's pick to be the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, who wrote the chapter in Project 2025 about the FCC.
So, I hope that there's a lot of opposition towards Trump. Like, I hope the same thing would be with Kamala. I mean, of course, there would be. Because, the government's, when it's caught in, like, gridlock and, the Democrats winning back the Senate and the House in 2 years, which is going to happen, and all those things, will hopefully keep them from doing too much damage and expediting the collapse of our system. I mean, like I said, that ultimately would be a good thing. And so, guys know my opinion about that, I think. I have mixed feelings. Like, spiritually, the sooner the system comes down, the better. But in terms of the ego and, our own level of comfort and all the rest of it, like, prolonging it is a necessity. But either way, we're fucked, so, really doesn't matter all that much. But this kind of thing that he does where he just lies about something, he says he has nothing to do with this thing and then starts hiring people for it. Like, it's just totally Trump. And, I like the way it affects the liberals because it drives them crazy. But it's just such a dick move. And, I was hoping we'd move on from Trump before. And, we'll see if there might be some good comedic value. I don't know. Like, 40 more years of this stuff. Like, I'm probably just not going to watch the news. It'll come down to that. Because, other than big events that happen, we'll see what happens after, like, the Trump's being sworn in and this whole period. It's kind of interesting now. And if there's something that's interesting, I'll certainly cover it. So we'll see. But just, the incompetence and the douchebaggery and all this stuff from both sides, it's just, it's, it's annoying and it's all kind of jumped the shark. Okay, so along those same lines here, former Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican in Florida, said Friday he will not return to Congress after resigning his House seat last week. Maybe there's some other job Trump has for him or something like that. But I wonder what's in the report that has made him choose not to go back to Congress. Unless Trump has something better for him. Like, how bad was that report? Because the guy's obviously a real scumbag. He's just, he's just obnoxious and he's got some pedo-friendly vibes going on there, whatever happened there. If any of those allegations are true, and they got to be a little bit true, because he would have seen the thing through, right? And so there's that. Like, and then this song is called "Our Parents Voted for Kamala." That's just a quality meme. Meghan McCain, she voted for her late father, John McCain, in 2024 election. He got trounced by Obama. And there they are back when she, was smaller. He was just, he was known as Songbird for his alleged information he turned over when he was captured in Vietnam. But, like, why would you do that? Why not vote for yourself? Like, you're voting for your dead father. MSNBC's Morning Joe delivers lowest rated show since 2021 amid lefty meltdown from Trump meeting. So, they had this where they read this woman's anti-woke essay, editorial. And then, of course, they went and met with Trump. Now, they did really well, as did the rest of the liberal media when Trump was president before. Because their constant Trump bashing really works. But whatever reason, they went to meet with them. And the people from The View and all these other people, they're turning on them, which is kind of hilarious. But their audience also turned them off. So, there they are. Someone sent me a video of him with RFK Jr., and I guess his son became autistic after he got the boop or something like that. I only watched a little bit of it. But he was talking to RFK Jr. about how he believed that the bloop caused autism. Like, he used to believe that, and he was like an RFK Jr., he was in on that with him. But now he's, gone this direction. He used to be a Republican, and wasn't the liberal person he is now. Okay, so a few more things to get to. Let's start off with this one here.
Or shocked to be arrested in front of her children.
A mother here.
A mother of 4, shocked to be arrested in front of her children.
It was anger and frustration, of course, because my children were having to witness that.
All because her then 10-year-old son was spotted walking alone in Mineral Bluff, Georgia, a town with a population of about 370.
It's really not even a town, hardly. It's not a super dangerous or even dangerous at all stretch of road.
Brittany Patterson lives less than a mile from town with her father and children. On October 30th of this year, she had to take her eldest son to a medical appointment. Her youngest son, Soren, didn't want to come, she said, so she left him at home. Then she received a call from a police officer.
So when you got that phone call from the police officer saying, hey, do you know your kid is in town? What did you think?
I said no. I didn't know he was in town. I was not expecting them to say that, but I wasn't terrified for him or scared for his safety.
The police officer drove Soren home, she says, and made it clear it was problematic. Brittany didn't know where Soren was.
Okay, so I grew up in the 70s. I was born in 1964. And, my wife was, we talk about this as well. She used to go to this creek, and her mom would call the police or whatever, because, she was nervous. And, she was just being a kid. But oftentimes our parents didn't know where we were. Like all the kids that grew up in my generation. Our parents had no idea where we were, right? My parents forgot to pick me up a couple of times. Once when I was in grade school, so either the second or third grade. I got mono in the 4th grade. So I played soccer the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades. And I think it was the 2nd grade. So I was, 7? I was 7 or 8 years old. And I went to soccer practice. It was 2 miles from my house because I went and looked it up. And it was multiple turns, right? It was we lived in a very suburban area. We lived in West Hartford. That was right on the borderline of Hartford. And it was a suburb, but it was busy streets. There was a couple of streets that were that I had to cross over that were, high traffic, right, where there's traffic going down the streets all the time. And then I had to walk along this road. And I had never, went there on my own, so I wasn't aware of the directions. You're a kid, you're just in a car. And you kind of, know where you are, but you're not driving. It's different when you drive and when you're a passenger. And I was only 8. And so my parents forgot to pick me up at soccer practice. And my coach and everybody left. And I'm just sitting there. It was cold. It was this time of year, November. Like it was like, I was in shorts, but it was too cold for shorts, and it was nighttime. Like it was 5 o'clock in Connecticut, and, temperatures dropping. And I might have had a hoodie, and I was in shorts, and I had cleats. I had no sneakers. So I'm walking home in cleats, which is painful. These soccer cleats. And this is 1970s cleats, right? So there's been technological development. And somehow I made it home. And another time later on, my parents, I was in Boy Scouts, so I don't know, I was 10 or 11 years old. And my parents didn't pick me up, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. I mean, it was, dark, and everybody left, like the Boy Scout guy and, and those guys. I mean, sometimes they're creeps, right? So, even then. But they just left me there, everyone. And I'm just standing there waiting for my parents, and I realize they're not coming just because they've done that before. This is 2 times I remember, but there might have been other times. And I started walking home, and I took a left towards Elizabeth Park. This was not as a difficult a journey, but I was tired. It was 10 o'clock at night. And I ended up taking a left instead of a right. I went to Elizabeth Park, and there were a bunch of teenagers that were like, gang-like kids. They're about, a football field away from me. I was walking towards them, and I was like, this is not right. I'm not going the right direction. And they started yelling at me, like threatening me, so I just turned around and ran, and I figured out how to go home. But, it was, my parents, didn't go to jail, right? There's no thought of that. And me and my friends were walking around doing things all the time. You were just like, a kid was like adults are now. We were just doing stuff, right? Like my parents didn't know where I was, I don't know, 70% of the time. I walked to school and walked home. And then, when my parents, wherever, we weren't doing something together as a family, I was out hanging with my friends. And a lot of times I was just in the neighborhood. But my parents were completely unaware of where I was. I was going to my friend's house, going to the store. We were walking to different places. There's a children's museum we used to walk to. It was probably about a mile or two from my house. There are all these things we used to do. We used to go into the town, which was, was a mile or two from the house. And so, sometimes, if we had money, we'd go to movies or whatever. But who knows, my parents didn't know where I was, right? This thing that came out, where your kids are. That's a new thing. Like when we grew up, your parents didn't know where you were. And so this thing is so much less than that. This is a 10-year-old kid who walked to town on his own and, in a small town, and his mom's being arrested.
At that point, Brittany thought the ordeal was over until officers showed up that evening to arrest her.
They asked me to put my hands behind my back and all that stuff, and I realized what was going on.
Brittany was
They cuffed you. They cuffed her for over that.
Taken to county jail, booked, and then released on $500 bail. She's now facing a misdemeanor charge of reckless conduct. The arrest
Reckless. That's reckless conduct.
Saying she, quote, knowingly did endanger the bodily safety of her juvenile son. If found guilty, she could face up to 1 year in prison and a $1,000 fine. The DA's
Jesus Christ, right?
His office didn't provide us with a comment. Local police declined to issue a statement, and we did not hear back from Child Services. Prosecutors asking Brittany to sign a safety plan before they'd consider dropping the charges, according to her lawyer.
We want to witness you downloading the GPS app to your son's phone. Okay. And then you've got to check on where he is. Really? And he's got to let you or grandma know where he is at all times.
But Brittany and her attorney are unwilling to accept this deal.
This is not right. I did nothing wrong. And I'm going to fight for that.
The story
Well, it's a national story now. This is a small town that's put itself on the map in a really weird way.
Striking a nerve as technology inundates our lives, giving parents more control over their children. So how much freedom should kids still get?
Are all parents going to have to put GPS on their child?
So the psychological term is called individuation. I don't know if that's still, it was when I, got my master's degree in counseling. And it means when your children start becoming individuals, right? So your kids, when they're 2, 3 years old, everything relates to the parents. The kids are, now of course there's daycare and these things, but, usually the kid would be around the mom, other than our civilization. In most civilizations, the kids would be around the mom or the dad till about the time they're 7 or 8. Then you start having their own lives, right? And now it's with the internet. But before we used to go out and do things, right? And you start having your own experiences and conversations. You're learning about life, right? You're learning about adult things like sex and things. And you're learning about, whatever it is through conversations. Your friends tell you stuff or whatever. Now, kids watch porn on the internet or whatever. And they start developing their own opinions, right? Your kids start thinking things about their parents that you don't think when you're a little kid. Like your parents are like your God, you're part of you, and you don't question you don't know you have piece of shit parents till you get older, right? But you start having this process of individuation where you're creating your own perspective of the world, your own beliefs, your own experiences. And like I said before, it used to be going into the real world. We used to be going out and doing things. Now it's on the internet. Kids have their own private lives on the internet, and they're seeing things and learning things and watching things and interacting with people. And oftentimes it's predatory, right? It's not safe at all. We hear, stories after stories of adults, predators, catfishing kids and, things like this. So, and just kids learning things and being exposed to things on the internet that are not good for them, and their parents have no idea because they can't be monitored. Because kids go out and they start living their own lives, right? Everyone did it. Your things that your parents never knew you knew or did, or thoughts you had or experiences you had. You were out there just being a kid. And now, of course, like I said, it's on the internet, but it's the same kind of process. You're having your own life. You're developing your own, path forward. You're differentiating yourself from your parents. Oftentimes becoming the exact opposite, because in America that often happens, where kids develop the exact opposite. If their parents are liberals, they become conservatives. If their parents are truthers, they become sheeple. They become the opposite of their parents, right? They embrace the different views. They become the people. Like if you have like a sort of a group that's liberals and conservatives. If you have an oppositional group, your kids often join that oppositional group because that's how things work in America, not so much in some of the other countries. But either way, there's a process here, and they're not saying what this kid's doing on the internet, because if the mom left him alone at home and he's on the internet, he could be doing all kinds of things he shouldn't, and the police aren't concerned about that. And those being on the internet and unsupervised, there's a level of safety there in a variety of different ways, because you still could have these experiences that are bad for you, as opposed to going out and walking around town. And so, this is a small town, and it's just it's enough of a crazy thing that it's a national story. But still, you think about this direction it's going in, and it's just a lack of this fear-based mentality where everybody's got to be micromanaged. I just want to add something. This is a national story because it's unusual. And when you see unusual stories, so many years ago, they started to roll out this new definition of gender and all these things, right? You guys all remember that. And it was unusual, and they rolled it out like, okay, everyone's going to be in disagreement. Like the majority of people who see this are going to say there's no way this should be a crime. There's no way this woman should have been handcuffed and taken out of her house in front of her kids like that. That's just, it's an abuse of authority. It sends the wrong message. It's a fucking misdemeanor. So for them to come and cuff her and bring her to the car is just silly. And it's a small-ass town. They probably have very little crime there, or whatever it is, right? 300 people or whatever, the amount of people that live there. And so it's happening in a small town. It isn't a national movement, or is it, right? Like sometimes they have these things where all of a sudden this becomes a nationwide thing. And people are outraged at first. So, if it isn't that, then it's just a silly little story. It has no relevance, just that people can talk about as a distraction. It's not going to be a thing. So it's either going to be a thing or it isn't going to be a thing. This is either just some, weird people in a small town who have power that shouldn't have, and they overreach on their power and it becomes a national story because, it's interesting. And people are like, this is effed up. Everyone has the same opinion. I don't think there's many people going, yeah, that woman should definitely go to jail. It's probably 90% people thinking that this is wrong. But if it becomes something where everyone, has this kind of, you're responsible to chip your kids and be in charge of where your kids are at all time, and yet they can roam around the internet and get into all kinds of problems and get all, have all these experiences they shouldn't have, right? And see all kinds of things they shouldn't see at a very young age, but you're not allowed them to wander around the real world anymore. They have to be completely supervised. And would it have mattered if she knew where he was? Is that the issue, that she doesn't know where he was? So we'll see how this goes. We'll see if this becomes a thing or not, but it could be something they're pushing for, and this is a way to roll it out. This is a controlled event to roll something out that is going to be a thing in the future. So, I guess there was the little beef thing that happened between The View and Joe Rogan.
I think that's why people like our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But we're checked by everybody. Yeah,
Okay, so not by real people, right? Not by real truthers, not by people who are seeking the truth. I began this thing with talking about how, the truth is, the real truth, whatever it is on such a deep level. It would be, excluding the material world altogether. It'd be the truth of your soul, right? Which would be just, the truth of the etheric world, the truth of something that doesn't involve the earth and your body and the third dimensional world, spiritual truth. But like in terms of what we're talking about here, these guys, and I got another thing to show you on The View, they think because they're backed by the official story that they're more legitimate because ABC News checks you guys. Wow, you guys, and they don't, because they're just giving their opinions, right? Like when Whoopi Goldberg defended Joe Biden being a snoozler and a groper, and then they pretended he wasn't senile. And so it's just bullshit. It's just, just crazy. Like it's crazy making gaslighting bullshit, right? And so whether they actually believe this or they're just saying this, but they're clearly not truthers. They're not saying the truth. Like they're not seeking the truth. And being backed by the official story that's welded together with corporate interests and the governmental, intelligence community and the Democratic Party, and saying these are the facts and we're legitimate. This is what all these people say. The CNN people and all of them. This is what they say is their reason that they're better than us, that they're fact checked, that they're just not out there doing their own research and giving their own opinions, that they are legitimized by the authoritarian sources, which is what they pushed on YouTube, right? That this is an authoritative source, that's official news. And it's just, it's just complete. I mean, it's horrible. It's not only dishonest and untruthful, it's just bad content, right? And it's just silly and like just, just goofy and just,
If we're wrong, we have, the legal note here.
The legal note.
The human legal note.
But we went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons.
He believes in dragons?
I checked it. He believes in
dragons. She checked it. He believes in dragons. She checked it. She knows for sure he's a dragon believer. This guy believes in dragons, and he's out there giving his opinion. Now, Joe Rogan is his own whatever he is, like shill, whatever, qualification he has. He's, part of the beast. But his content's so much better than their content. There's no comparison. There's no comparing it, right? Even Tucker Carlson was kind of weird. You can't compare the two things. You can take pretty much any podcast, and regardless of what's said and what the people believe, it's just going to be better than this, right? It just will be. And there's lots of shitty podcasts out there, but it's just, this is like horrible. It's not like, it's just the worst content. Like these women have, their opinions suck and they're so wrong and they're so annoying and they're not funny. There's no entertainment here. Like other than mocking it, there's no value in it. Like if you're going to this show and you're like, oh my God, that's a good point. Like, when they talk about it, you're like, oh my God, I see the world so much better now after they explained it to me, right? If you watch The View, seriously, it's just like what kind of person are you? You're like, you're certainly a double-digit IQ, lack of any sort of awareness and consciousness. If this stuff is above your pay grade, if this stuff is, is insightful to you, like, that you learn things and stuff from them, right? In terms of their opinions and their takes on stuff, then you're barely functioning. You're like almost a zombie, right?
Believes in dragons.
Did you triple force that?
Yes, I did.
In response
Okay, so then Joe Rogan apparently said this here.
also changed his description to dragon believer. The internet went into
Okay, wait, let's go back here.
link to the video. He then also changed his description to dragon believer. The internet went into meltdown about the hilarious interaction. This commentator said, "This clip is
So this is, all this stuff, right? Like classic View. So we have, I guess, let's go to the other View thing here. But, this is their view. I'm not doing a pun here. This is like CNN, the reliable sources with Brian Stelsa and Donnie O'Sullivan, these guys and these people in the mainstream media. Their belief is that since they're fact-checked and they're owned, and they're resentful about it too, because they can't be themselves. This is why they don't like Trump. And again, Trump sucks, but at least Trump gets to be his authentic self. So this one thing that we see here, which is the inauthentic candidate in Kamala Harris, and just the lies and the talking points and the just goofiness of the whole thing, right? There's that, which we see, and then the, maybe not, good or developed, but just somebody being themselves in Trump and then these other people, the lower levels of the truth community. Just being yourself on the internet, being authentic and having your own opinions. Trump's opinions are own too. He's got his handlers. So that's different, as does Rogan and these other people, Tucker Carlson. But at least they're heading in, a better direction. And their content is better to watch because of that. Where The View, it's so remedial, but their only claim is, we're the official source. We're part of the official story, which has been validated by the authority, right? And what the battle here has always been about is we don't subscribe to the same authority. We don't look at these institutions, whatever they might be, governmental institutions and corporate institutions and the controlling interests, as the authority. Like they don't have some sort of they're not in control of what's true and what's false. And these people are saying it is. And we're farther along than them, right? Because we know what the system's about, and we know how much deception is there, right? And American people woke up to Joe Rogan being senile. Eventually, 70-80% of them realized that Joe Biden was senile, and he wasn't able to do his job. And these guys were still covering for him, when the rest of the people already knew. So, they're the bottom feeders, right? Okay, so here's the full interaction. I have something more I want to show you from The View, but I found it here.
Do a little PSA that just because you saw it on one of these social media sites does not make it true.
Let's go back a little bit farther here.
Young generation's mainstream media, does it just intensify the echo chamber that is already cable news?
Well, I'd like to do a little PSA that just because you saw it on one of these social media sites does not make it true. Right. So circulating posts.
Woo! Like people are applauding that, right? There's a lot of bullshit on social media. That's true. Like, people just either, it's disinformation put out by intentionally, there's people in mainstream media and there's people in the intelligence community and there's corporations and governments who have employees that their job is just to put out disinformation. And then there's people who just are stupid and they put out their own disinformation. They're lazy. They don't fact check things themselves. And not fact checking meaning the government, but at least, not the official story fact checking, but fact checking them in a way, the best way that you can, right? But the media has been perpetrating major frauds and saying things like, for example, the Iraq War. They said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction based on Dick Cheney. And America went to war and killed 1 million people because of that. And it was all lies. Saddam Hussein was not involved in the big event in 2001. We know what happened with there. And then opioids. Opioids were these new opioids that were put out were said that they weren't addictive, and they were. The pharmaceutical companies lied to people. There's the opioid crisis. And then there was the financial crisis where banks were saying that it was okay to bet on these loans, the whole derivatives market that came out where they were giving unwise loans to people. The banking bubble, the subprime loans, right? They had these the faulty structure where the people were paying less in their payments in the beginning, and then had these balloon payments that were coming up they couldn't afford, so they were going to default on their loans, and that brought down the whole economic system to some extent, right? These are just some of the things, and then of course stuff with COVID we just saw, where all these people told us lies that they were told by the official story that were the truth, and they turned out to be lies. And there was no accountability. Nobody suffered. Nobody's, You've been exposed. Like, other than what we've shown you on the internet and social media, there's no coverage of all these major lies that have been told that affected people's lives. People died because of it. People suffered, all these things. So when the government lies and the media lies, it's worse than when individuals lie on the internet. But they demonize all of us like we're all crazy conspiracy theorists, right?
And then having people say, is that real? Like, when you see something, you have to source it. You have to check and then check again. And it doesn't matter who sent it to you or who you're looking at and thinking, oh, this person's right. A lot of the time, we've got AI, we've got a massive misinformation and disinformation campaign. It is the #1 near-term fear of the Global Economic Forum.
And you guys have to be fact-checked by outside of your own little bandwidth of reality and government control, right? And so they never get to that point. Like, they never confront what everybody knows is the media lies, right? The media fucking lies and everybody knows it, except the media. Like, we're all factual. We make a mistake, we own it. No, you don't. You have been carrying water for people. Admit that you saw that Joe Biden was senile and you came out and you fucking lied to it, lied about it.
People want us divided, and they aren't just here in this country. They're foreign adversaries who are infiltrating our social media because it is prudent for us to stay.
So, like, who's watching this woman and saying, "Oh my God, like this is, boom, my mind is blown," right? Like.
Way. So when you see something that really pisses you off, you should triple check that one.
Yeah. But I think that
you don't triple check that one because that can't be true.
Our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But
we're checked by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if we're wrong, we have the legal note here.
The human legal note.
But we went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He believes in dragons.
I checked it. I believe he believes in dragons. You know what? It's going to be on his Twitter feed tomorrow. It's going to be there. It's going to be on his new Twitter feed.
Believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did. And he also thinks that dragons, like dinosaur type of animals, roamed the earth when people did. So this is the type of really, really bad.
Yeah, because we believe in Darwinism. None of these things I don't know what the dragon reference is, but the history of humanity, which I've said I've been covering, is just a flat out lie. It's just all lie. Like the biblical stuff, all the stuff that, the scientific stuff even more, and what people believe in terms of our origin story. And I'm not even talking about the soul stuff, how our soul creates our bodies, which is a whole other thing, right? Because these are, pro-choicers.
That's going out there.
Well, in defense, there are some really good news.
It's possible that Donald Trump did roam the earth when dinosaurs were here.
There are
and maybe you were there with Joe Biden, right? So let's hear what this one woman says, and I want to go to the other thing.
some really good news kind of influencer types, and I think it's great that they're getting information about global and current events in front of younger people who maybe don't tune into traditional media. But to Sarah's point, there has to be some fact checking and actually verification of the things that are shared, because
we don't agree on who controls the truth, because no one controls the truth. The truth is whatever it is. It's not what I say it is. It's not what you say it is. The truth is the truth. The truth is there. It is the truth, right? Whatever the truth is the truth. It's not based on my opinion or my interest or yours or anybody else's. And so you guys are so far away from that. Like, you're not even real people. They're just, these, whatever this is, right? These creations, and they're not very good. They're not interesting. They're not like cool characters that are, some are interesting characters in a show or something. Like, they're just ick. Like, it's just horrible. So let's go to the other thing where they're having a meltdown over somebody here. Okay, so this is the following day, and the New York Post said that they had some kind of meltdown here, and I haven't seen it yet.
Applaud them. I want to acknowledge them. I want to thank them, and I want to tell them your job is not over. You've got Tulsi Gabbard to worry about.
Yeah.
Well, you've got Peter
here's the
Hegseth
question.
to worry about.
Okay.
You've got RFK to worry about.
Right.
You've got Mehmet
Like, she just does not sound smart. Just her expression and all these things. Obviously she's not smart, but if somebody is getting their information from The View, well, I certainly don't want them here in my audience. I mean, they're welcome to be here, but they're just going to walk around bumping into shit and not understanding, right? Like it's so far. This is like, not even kindergarten. I don't even know what you would classify this as, right? But in terms of people's ability to find truth and to understand what's going on around them, if they think the View is legitimate and they go there as like, oh, the View's on. Like anybody would say, oh my God, the View's on. Let's watch it, right? What time is the View on? Oh, let's, people who are taping the View because they think it's just a great show, people who are regular viewers, then, if there is a culling going on, like I suggest that there is. And, I have this Thanksgiving Day, I'm going to talk about this at the end of this video, message I've already delivered. Today's Sunday, the 24th, I believe, November 24th. And so if they are, there's culling going on, that there's going to be depopulation and there's going to be a removal of people who are less conscious, that there's going to be some kind of an upliftment of humanity, and the people who just aren't, who are just bumping into shit, just struggling, who are just, unaware and oblivious, just aren't going to be able to make the cut, right? Well, this would be one of the indicators that you watch mainstream media, shows like The View, these kind of things. And so those people, their audience, they don't, like, to me, they don't exist, right? I mean, I wouldn't have any kind of relationship with them and, whatever it is. Like, I wouldn't, don't want them here because they wouldn't understand. Like, it's not that they're unwelcome because of some sort of prejudice. It's because if they think this is good, then they can't even comprehend what I do here or what's done on the internet. Like, if people are applauding that The View is, fact-checking and these things about the internet, triple sourcing things, they're, clueless, and they're thinking that the mainstream media and this, stuff is positive and it's, it's truth.
Us to worry about.
Well, so the same thing that they were able to muster up, they need to continue mustering up, and we need to thank them and applaud them for what they've done.
Since this is Trump's second term, isn't he now considered a lame duck?
No,
and why do these Republicans feel the need to have to just bow to him now when they're not going to really get anything?
Okay, so a lame duck comes the last 2 years of your presidency, after the midterm elections, where usually what happens is people get pissed off at the Republicans in this case, and so they elect, there's a blue wave that comes in, right? The second term, that almost always happens because there's resistance and resentment towards the president. He doesn't have as much enthusiasm. And then these down ballot races, the Democrats will do well because that's just what happened. And then after that, the president has a couple of years where they're just, kind of a lame duck. And people aren't worried about them because they're going to be retired pretty soon, right? And she should know that because she's on this fucking show that talks about politics.
Well, they have 4 more years, Joy. But, to Anna's point, let me say this. We're all thrilled that Matt Gaetz, I agree with you, Alyssa, he would have been a very dangerous pick for the Department of Justice.
He's dangerous.
But his new pick, Trump's new pick, Pam Bondi, I believe she's a dangerous pick as well because she is, she supported Trump's false election claim. She was involved in the efforts to overturn the results. And so that is now the person that's going to be the chief law enforcement.
Let me say this. She was on television. That's the primary requisition.
Look, I have known Pam Bondi for many, many, many years. I will tell you, I don't want to ruin her reputation with MAGA people, but Pam Bondi and I hung out a lot when she was Attorney General of Florida and she would come to Miami. We drank a lot together. I like...
Yeah, that's probably explains a lot. The consumption of alcohol, right? Drank a lot. Like, so they go out and get drunk quite a bit. And then they come out here, they talk like they are knowers, right? You don't even understand what the effects of alcohol are and the long-term effects of alcohol are. Doesn't make you smarter, right? Doesn't make you more aware. It's like to be oblivious. You're drinking something that impairs your ability to function.
Her a lot. She's not a kook. What's a little election denialism between friends? When, at least, listen, everything in life is relative, people.
Denialism.
So all of a sudden, she's great because you know her. Like, if you didn't know her, you'd be saying the same stupid shit because you got drunk with her a couple times. She's cool. After all this fact-checking bullshit you guys said, Like if she's an election denier, which of course, how we feel about it, but like for them, that's one of the worst things. That's being anti-democratic.
Okay, it's a very big
So
deal.
we got to take the wins where we can find them, folks. Saying this? Everything in life is relative. There is no accusation of sexual harassment or assault against her. There's no accusation of
She's also qualified.
Yeah, but these are just accusations. Now, Matt Gaetz is a creep. I don't know about Pam Bondi, but there's none of these people that are good people. They're in Washington, D.C., and they want these positions. And therefore, it excludes them from being good people. Whatever intentions they had in the beginning, they've been corrupted and will be corrupted by the powers that be, the money power and the political power and all these things. All these people, they're just, they're incapable of, their focus is on a demonic system, right? They're part of the beast, and the beast doesn't churn out good people. The beast doesn't produce saints. You don't become a saint from being, hobnobbing with these people. It's all degraded and brings you down to a lower level. I get into this on my Thanksgiving Day thing.
With a 17-year-old,
accusations.
She hasn't killed, beheaded a whale. She hasn't stabbed a dead bear cub. I mean, my God.
Stabbed a dead bear cub. Like, that's a horrible thing. The eating of roadkill, which is fucked up. Like, I'm not, my brother had this story. It was like out in Great Barrington. And he said he was driving, and there was a dead animal. And there was a guy who got out. And the thing had just been hit and was still alive. The guy got out with something. So, it was fresh at least. And he starts hitting it. It's like a raccoon or a beaver or something. And he starts whacking the thing. And my brother drives by, and the guy goes, "You can get the next one." Right? But, at least it doesn't go to waste. And it shouldn't go to waste. The pelt, animal fur, I mean, they have value. People who have skills to do that. It's not an easy thing to do. Right? Don't dismiss these things when you're wearing polyester fucking whatever crap that you have on, right? Like we're having real furs and things animals die, and, him skinning the animal and eating the meat, it's not a bad thing, right? And, this story is a weird story, but like he's more of a real person than you are. Like going out and being drunk and hobnobbing with people in the city and thinking that you're living real life and outsourcing your food killing to big factory farms and the torture of animals that live there, which, if you're eating factory farm food, you're a piece of shit, right? That's a way to look at it, because you are participating in the abuse. If you're a person who's eating this types of food, and I don't know if she's a meat eater or whatever it is, but you're outsourcing this to people who mistreat animals in a way that's, it's not natural, and it's not, it's inauthentic, and it's evil, right?
Minimize some of the things that she has done, and I think we have a clip of some of her former comments. Why don't we take a look at that?
We are thrilled to have won Pennsylvania with 87% of the vote in, and we're up almost 400,000 votes. So we're thrilled. We do have evidence of cheating. We are not going anywhere until they declare that we won Pennsylvania. These fake ballots that are coming in late. And back to the observation, they're not letting us watch the process.
Pam, did you just say fake ballots?
Ducey's father.
There could be. That's the problem.
The Duceys.
So
They're going to drop a Ducey.
I don't think we need to minimize someone like that who is supposed to be the people's attorney.
Agreed,
the
but
Department
I
of Justice. She's going to be Trump's attorney.
I would still take her over Matt Gaetz.
You can take her over Matt Gaetz, but
no, I'm not minimizing.
I would take the dead bear cub over Matt Gaetz.
But I still won't give as much.
Robert Kennedy would also.
I won't give as much credit as Anna is getting about them standing up to anything, because right now it shouldn't be for people. It shouldn't be like this. Everyone that cares about crimes against women should be saying, "No, that's out of bounds."
That's out of bounds. That's too much. All right, there's so much of you can watch. But, like Anna Navarro's measuring stick here goes against their whole official story, because she's getting her own personal opinion and experience with this woman and having time with her and getting drunk with her, and that they're friends, and she says she's okay because she knows her, which goes against everything they just said about fact-checking and, all these goofy, like it's so robotic. And going back to this other story about this woman being arrested for her son walking around. It's this idea that you can't make your own decisions. And yet they're all about, the right for a woman to choose to murder a fetus, right? Fetus murdering. But they're against it when it comes to the vaccine or whatever it might be. And, when things turn out not to be true, they don't say, oh, wow, we were wrong and the beast was wrong. The beast never admits it's wrong. They'll throw individuals under the bus, but the beast never admits, the system is never in question. And it's a fucked up system. We have a fucked up system. It's producing fucked up people. And we're going in the wrong freaking direction, right? And everybody can kind of sense it, but won't do anything about it. They're just babbling over silly little things and instead of finding a real solution, like identifying the problem. The system is fucked and it's taking people in the wrong direction. We're creating the system and the system is creating us, and we're making the system worse and the system is making us worse, right? And so we're going in a demonic direction, and we're getting stupider and more entitled and weaker and all these things away from what is to be a real human being. And so, instead of accepting that as our reality, and then figuring out like how do we proceed from there, which it all comes down to what you are inside internally and the divinity within you. And if you have a soul, which you do, then connecting with that soul, like it's been disconnected, and then all the other things stem from that, right? Like when you're in contact with your soul, then you have a spiritual purpose, and you're living on you're embracing your higher nature. But these guys would never identify that because they're so far, down the rabbit hole of the abyss and the servicing the beast, that they're never gonna go there. Okay, so CBS and Stephen Colbert and CBS, he's on CBS, are the worst to copyright something. This is a 56-second clip. I'd like to use all of it, but I might only be able to use some of it. And he's with Joe Biden here.
Hey, buddy, we're not done here. Sit down, okay? We're just getting started, okay? You need some bug spray for the ants in your pants?
That's a classic Joe Biden joke. But look at how happy he is, right? This is...
Look, all right? All right. That's a dad joke. Get used to it. All right. Something else we need to talk to you about.
Look, we're not mad. We're just disappointed.
I'm actually mad. I'm actually very mad. Look, we overheard you.
Okay, he's got a glow. He's actually like glowing. He's so, like whatever's happened here. Now, he wanted to be president a second term. So that's what he wanted. And he thought he deserved it, and he thought he was going to get it. Right? And so, but he dealt with his disappointment. And since then, he's been all about fucking the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. And like whatever he did to contribute to that, which he did do some shit. Remember, he sabotaged her. But he's glowing. He's like fucking glowing.
I heard you using some pretty salty language the other day.
We know you're better than that. We don't want to hear those swear words from you. Hogwash, baloney, malarkey.
Joe, we're on CBS. They're going to have to bleep half of that.
Hey, look, I'm sorry. I'm so darn disappointed.
That is the angriest I have ever seen this man.
Yeah, we've seen him a lot angry where he was yelling at people. When he was challenging that guy to a fight in a push-up contest. He said, can you step outside to that one guy? And he called that guy fat. Remember 2019? And then all the other times he's lost it. He's glowing now. He's totally happy.
Are you happy?
No, he's happy. Look at him. Look at how happy he is.
Look what you did.
I'm sorry.
Look what you did to your pop. You made him say the D word.
Well, look, he's just glowing. He's freaking glowing. All right. Okay, so I ended up doing a little bit of voiceover already, which you're going to hear in a moment. And I realized I didn't continue on what I started last night with this thing about lying and deception, right? And, everybody experiences this because lying and deception and self-deception and people believing their own lies is a huge problem. And I can say it's a huge problem for a lot of reasons, but one way to demonstrate it is think about the times in your life where you catch somebody lying. And when you confront them with their lies and they're startled about it, in disbelief, they go into denial, they get angry at you. I mean, this happens in counseling sessions all the time, right? The need for counseling a lot of times is because people are, not just lying to themselves, but they've created this whole victimization and whole, scenario about how they're screwed over and the life is miserable and they're helpless and they can't do anything about it. I just read this from the Whispers of the Brighter World for the 165th edition of the Journey series. There's a description about how, the whole basis of the Sajmark system is the original thought that created the universe is also present in the human mind. The human mind is capable of that same kind of creative, at least in terms of people's internal worlds, and can create a universe, an internal universe, that in some ways is more vast than the external one, right? Which is, for most people, if they don't think about something like that, and you say that to them, they won't understand what that means. Many of you wouldn't understand that. But there's this vast internal universe you have of memories and experiences and dreams and fantasies and TV shows that you've seen. And, it's not just memory, it's, all these different things that you've created, right? And let's say somebody stabs you in the back and you're really hurt by that, and you create a whole defense mechanism so that never happens again, right? Like you don't trust people anymore or whatever it might be. What happens to people when they're traumatized. And people create this whole illusionary world where they see things through a lens that is completely inaccurate. I mean, everybody does this to a certain extent. And sometimes you confront somebody on the lens in which they see the world. Like sometimes people will be paranoid and make something up, and then when you tell them, well, that's not true, they just won't believe you. Like even though they're talking about you and you're not lying to them, and you're like, well, that isn't true. And they're like, they can't, they still believe, they don't want to confront the fact that they were, they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed that they're not in control of their own thinking mechanism, right? Their own internal world. And so they just find a way that you're completely wrong or you're lying or, whatever it is, right? People will accuse you of something if they're already questioning your character and think you're a liar or whatever they think you are, right? And everybody lies to whatever extent. Or they've been damaged so much by people in the past, they'll never believe you. Like they just won't believe what you say. And you can't convince them otherwise. Like no matter how much evidence you show them. I mean, even stuff where you deal with people in the truth community, when you deal with the sheeple, and you show them something that shows that there's stuff that they believe is a lie, they'll just find some way, and now it's like, oh, it's all, doctored, it's fake news, it's not, coming from the authority, or the authority says this, and I'll believe them, and this is what I saw in the news, or, this is what I was saying earlier about people's, like who they considered a real legitimate authority. You can't take an establishment that is shown over and over again that it deceives its people, all the way back to the origin story, which I've been covering in my recent videos, and, deceives people. And then on top of that, they do things that are just counteractive, self-destructive and destructive to the environment and, things with bad intentions. And I mean, all these things, right? It takes a lot of paranoia for people to build atomic bombs. Like it takes a lot of bad decision-making, a lot of lying to oneself to justify building an atomic bomb, especially the first one. I mean, it makes more sense when people are like, well, they got it, we have to have it, right? I mean, that doesn't make things better. We're putting up these nuclear power plants or doing anything that could lead to potential destruction of not only human habitat, but animal life and things like that, right? I mean, all the things that we're doing that cause issues with the environment, that's causing destruction to the water system and to the air and all these things. Like all the pollutions, they shouldn't exist, right? Like that's just a lot of self-deception that would allow you to justify doing something like cutting down all the redwood trees or something, like clear-cutting a whole forest. You have to lie to yourself quite a bit and be a real selfish prick to do that because, you're cutting down natural habitat. Yeah, you can take some of the trees. Sure, take some of them. I mean, the forest can survive you taking some of them. Find out how many you can take without disrupting the ecological balance. No, fuck it, let's take all of them, right? There's stuff in the ground, and if we take it out of the ground, we can turn it into an explosive and then put it in these vehicles and drive around all over the place. And then those things are going to add pollution to the environment. Who the fuck told you could do that? Well, God did, because we're God's chosen people, and we can do whatever we want. God, we're manifest destiny. Whatever we do is backed by God. So, people make up shit like that, right? And so that's why people are fucking up the earth, because nobody wants to call themselves on their own bullshit. And when you do call people on their bullshit, they react in a way where it's hostile, and especially if it's really ingrained in them. And so it's not only like they're lying to themselves, but when those lies that they're lying to themselves about get confronted, I mean, this is for everybody, they fall apart because they don't want to be the kind of people that are crazy and they're self-deceiving, because that's really a sign of insanity when you believe this illusionary world that you've created. And pretty much everybody's done that to some extent, and some people worse than others. They've created this level of victim consciousness and justification for their wrong behavior, and lying to themselves about why they do stuff and its effects on other people. And so the lie has people's ability to lie is everything, because if you couldn't lie, and you could only if you could only tell the truth, and you would only act in a way, I mean, you'd be like a robot, right? You would just be, there'd be one choice in every situation. There'd be one honest choice, right? I mean, occasionally you'd make a mistake because you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture or something like that. But it would be, it would be minimal compared to what we have now. All right, let me get into this other thing here. Okay, so like I said, I have a Thanksgiving Day message I made Saturday, November 23rd, and then today's Sunday, November 24th, and I made a little introduction to go with it because I didn't want it to be like too dark or too whatever. The way people receive it, right? There's the way that I feel about something. I have an idea. Ideas, there's a free flow of ideas here. I get into the voiceover portion of the opinions, and the ideas are not something that I verify. I mean, in terms of my own ideas, they're just stuff I say, and I don't know if it's true or not, and I don't care. This is what's coming to me. There's a channeling type of, free flow of whatever consciousness plugging into the Ethernet. And I have allowed myself, I facilitate this idea that I'm willing to be I'm acting as a conduit for whatever information to flow through me. And oftentimes it has nothing to do with me. I could care less about it. It's just ideas that are there that just flow through. And oftentimes it's coming while I'm talking. Like ideas are just flowing. I start talking and there's just, I have some framework or template of what I'm going to say, but there's just a free flow of this, kind of, I don't want to say channeled, whatever it might be, the way you look at it, but just this downloading of information and allowing it to flow through me. And so it's not mostly intended for me. Like, I'm not going to re-listen to these things. Some of the things are things that I already know or I already believe. Some of it's brand new stuff I've never thought about before, never, whatever. There's a connection between people's minds and hearts, your feelings and your deeper level feelings particularly, and your thoughts are connected to, and your whole system, your physical system are connected to your soul, but also other etheric beings. And there's an influence that happens. And sometimes the thoughts that you have and the things that the things that you believe don't even come from yourself, right? You're influenced by, so many different things. That's why there's subliminal messaging works. And I'm talking about something higher in the spiritual, but at a lower level, hypnosis and spiritual, subliminal messaging and heavy-handed, things like that influence you on a subconscious level, like the psychological world and the people who control the system now know how to get to people's internal world and their subconscious and things, right? And, on a different level, there's etheric beings that can influence your thoughts, and some of those entities can be negative, right? They can be what people consider demons, or at least lower, right? But some of the things, the overall events that happen and some of the directions and decisions you make, they're already established. You think you're making a choice. It's like in the Matrix movie where he meets that character called the Architect, and he said, he has a choice between saving his girlfriend or saving the world, and he chooses his girlfriend. And then he says, you've already made your choice. I saw something else where somebody was saying that to somebody, like, you've already made your choice. Actually, I was watching the end of one of these movies, the Huntsman, these movies that were made that were about Snow White, and they were like, they're more adult level movies. I was watching the end of one, and the woman who was the queen, she had this thing with the mirror, and she was told to kill her sister's baby, and she's yelling at the mirror for showing her something, like, because the baby was going to be fairer than her, right? Like she did with Snow White. And the mirror said, I'm just a reflection, and you've already made your decision. Like, you're already going to kill the baby. Don't blame it on me. I just am telling you what's going to happen. The baby's going to be prettier than you. So if you want to be the fairest of them all, then you're going to kill the baby because that's who you are, and don't blame it on me because I'm just reflecting back to you what you are, right? I'd seen this movie before, and I'd forgot what it was, and I was watching it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then now I forget, and then I just remembered where I saw that. But in terms of all these things, there's a pathway that's there, and people are on it. And, my path is kind of, outside of the videos and outside of these, the same things that I use to make my own decisions, that's kind of more in the Journey series, is this information, this free flow of information. And, that's how I, process what I'm going to do and, the things that are important to me. But the things that I say here aren't meant for me, right? This is me allowing myself to be a vehicle for the free flow of information coming from the divine. And there are people who are going to tune in and they're going to hear something, and it's going to be very specific to, they're going to feel like this video or some other video is just meant for them. This is part of the Sajmarg meditation. After Sunday group meditation, the preceptor would read some sort of excerpt from the literature. One of the messages from Whispers of the Brighter World, later on, before that, various books. But they would read something, and there were people in the room who felt that reading was chosen just for them. We've all experienced that your person's going through something, a little crisis, something difficult, whatever. They're struggling with something, and they hear, or just in general, they're in a place where they needed some information, and then randomly, apparently randomly, there's a reading, and it doesn't just happen at this group meditation. Somehow information comes to them, and they're like, I just needed to hear that. And it happens all the time, and people get that experience here. So, when I talk about these things, I have my perspective of how it is or the tone of it is, but I don't know how you're going to receive it. Each person's going to receive it differently, depending on your belief systems and your emotional state and your ability to interpret something. But the Thanksgiving Day talk that I was giving, it wasn't like I was being, negative or morbid or something like this. I get into some of the difficulties I went through. It was more about preparing people for what's coming. And it happened because of a meditation that I had, right? But I felt like I should do an introduction and clarify and give some techniques about, how to deal with things. So that's coming, and this is a part of it. Like this video is, say, Sunday. I think I have at least one video up already that needs to go out probably tomorrow. And so let me see what I have here. So I have that video. Okay, so I have a video that needs to go out today or later today or tomorrow. So this video is going to be up Monday or Tuesday. This will probably be the last video before Thanksgiving, but I'm not sure. There might be another one after this. But either way, it's a part of that thing. Because this video was made the same day as the Thanksgiving Day video. And so they're tied together. And so I had a little bit of a thing. So I don't have much connection to high school and my classmates in high school. So I had a best friend from high school who, after college, so this was 4 years, 1987 6 or so, I ended up moving down. He was in Atlanta. His mom lived in Atlanta with his stepfather. And, we were in Connecticut, and he went to school in Pennsylvania. But I was looking to get out of Connecticut. I went to a year of school in Florida. I'd been to Florida quite a bit. And, I just never liked Connecticut. It just wasn't for me. It's not a place it's one of the last places. There's good things there. It's a beautiful country. You can find good things in America everywhere. And it's by the ocean. It has a shoreline. And, but the state itself and the, people that are there and all of it, it's just like one of the last. I would never live there again. And I don't even think about going to visit there. It's not like I miss anything. There's not one thing I miss about the whole state, right? Like there's things that I would go back nostalgically, like going back to my old elementary school or some of the nice places that I visited there. But there's nobody or nothing there for me, right? Even my family members that are there we're not really connected or any of these things. Like I don't have any kind of sentimentality about it. And I certainly don't have that about high school. Like my high school years, I started high school and, I talked about being in a Rahu period from Vedic astrology, which is a dark planet that's, often a time where you're in a daze and so you're very unclear and unfocused, and you can be depressed and suicidal and drug use and accident prone, things like that. And so I fell off of a zip line when I was 14. I was a freshman in high school, and I started getting migraine headaches, and I started smoking pot. And so, I smoked a lot of pot in high school, and I was very unfocused. I didn't really, I was just floating through. I was doing my best to kind of stay invisible. Like that's, kind of what I was about, and kind of about that now too. I was introverted. And, my family life, my parents were always in a daze, and they're incompetent. And, I get into that a little bit in the voiceover about, this thing that we're going to talk about on Thanksgiving. And so I had, some friends and some circle of people, and I went to some parties. I had somewhat of a social life. And I was a good basketball player, but I was small, and I started late. And so, I had the opportunity to play basketball, but things just broke in a way where, the coach for the basketball team saw how much better I got, but he quit my senior year. And he told me that if he was the coach, he would have had me on the team. He saw how much I improved. He saw how much potential I had. But he had just had enough of it, and he had a number of seniors who graduated that were his big, whatever it was. So he took he was a gym teacher there, but he was not going to coach basketball that year. But he said to me after I got cut that he said that, you totally deserve to be on this team. You're better than some of the people that were on the team and whatever. And that, that he saw how much better I got. But so, once I was kind of bummed about the time, but now I could care less about it. It's, I know it was for the best, and other than that, I was kind of lost. Right. So and I don't have as many memories about high school as I do my elementary school. It was just this kind of void. I wasn't bummed or depressed, but, high school is just, high school is it's like a prison. You go to this place, it's like a prison. And I just didn't get it. I didn't get what everyone was doing there. I didn't have this, people were preparing for college, and I didn't understand that. Of course I do now, but I didn't then. And, I thought I would just go to college, but I didn't, college to me was just the way that you would graduate from elementary school to junior high and junior high to high school, and then you go to high school to college. But it wasn't like I had some kind of plan. And my parents had talked to me, which I get into there. We had no conversations about my future or any of these things. My parents were just totally incompetent and all these, the way they were. And, I just was kind of drifting and floating and not with any real direction. And so, I don't have bad memories about high school. There's nothing that sticks out, but it's just it's just this, like an acid trip, going, Alice in Wonderland. This thing that happened where I was there, this place, and I have a few memories about it, just the general sense of the thing. And so, after I moved to Atlanta, my best friend from high school, we ended up he had a wedding, and he wanted me to be a part of the frickin' the wedding party, and like some shit happened where I couldn't go, and like we just lost contact after that. I wasn't reliable, right? Because I moved back to the Connecticut, Massachusetts area, and he was having his wedding, and like it just But by that time, I kind of thought he was kind of that's a great person. So so we didn't have any contact after that. Sometime in the '80s. And when I was in college, I went my second attempt at college. I came back to Connecticut, and most of the people who were in my class had probably graduated or were graduating. They were already ahead of me because of, I took a year off and all these things. And so I saw two people from my high school at bars, and we had a conversation. And that was the only contact I've had, and I haven't thought about high school pretty much ever. So it's just something that's not a big deal for me. But then Facebook recommended somebody that was from high school as a friend, and I just happened to see this, and it was kind of weird for me, right? Like, so, because I was thinking about, I've searched my high school a couple of times. I'm not sure, like I don't have a thing where, with past relationships and people, like I wonder about them, my family, which I'm not in contact with, and, all the rest of it. But I don't have connection with them on social media. And I'm good at finding things because of what I do here. But I don't search for it like old girlfriends or, like I'm kind of interested in what happened to them, but not interested enough to, this is a job for me where I have to put in some time and effort into finding them and, whatever on social media. Like I don't have that kind of thing, right? And, my time on my computer is limited to what I do here. Like I don't want to spend, it's just extra work for me. And so, like, I don't look up people from my past. And I've certainly people from my high school because they was just like, it was like I was in a daze the whole time. Okay, so I just, I don't know what I just did. Something happened where I got distracted, and I ended up seeing that Trump's new Surgeon General said the vaccine was a gift from God and was going to save lives, and it was a miracle, and all these things. And, she's going to get passed through and Kennedy won't. So, so that's happening. I'll be covering that in my next video. And so, where was I? Well, anyway, so I don't search for these people in my past and have no interest in my high school. But this person I saw was this girl. She was a cheerleader. She was about 4'11", 5 foot tall. And she was always smiling, and she was really into cheerleading. She's like a cute little blonde girl. And my best friend from high school, like, had a big crush on her. Like, she was just, someone who was very prevalent, but I think she was introverted. And she came up to me in a bar and started talking to me. And I'd seen she put on like 50 pounds or 40 pounds or something. And she was, small. So even if it was 20 pounds, she was really heavy compared to what she was. And I always thought she was a nice person, but really didn't have much of a sense of her. We never talked. I was, I had my circle of people and I had interactions with people. I don't think she was in my classes, but everyone knew who she was. And she recognized me, which I was kind of surprised by. And because I was probably 4 inches taller and, I was like completely different, right? Like I was, physically bigger, and I kind of blossomed in my own life because, high school was not, it was just like this thing that I had to go through. Whereas for her, it was like her whole world, right? And she was with this guy who my best friend from high school had a fight with. And I was wondering if they were dating because he came over and said one thing to me, like, and I knew him more than I had talked to this guy a few times. He was kind of obnoxious, kind of a preppy, and just, he was somebody who was like really into his town. Somebody who, there was like families who had been there for a while kind of thing. And he had a big family and they were very prevalent in this town. My parents moved from West Hartford, Connecticut to Simsbury, where I went to high school. And it was a suburb outside of a suburb. Like West Hartford was a suburb of Hartford, and Simsbury was even farther away from that. And you had to go over a mountain. It was very rural. and it was like really like a Connecticut itself is a big suburb, so it's a kind of a whole. I really can't describe it unless you've been there. But the rural places that are suburbs and the cities and just the way people are there, and it's just there's a lot of money in a small state, and just most of the people worked in Hartford and worked in the insurance industry, and so like there's a whole thing there. And there are people just really into the town, and I wasn't one of them. And so my entire experience with that town was, and there was a beautiful mountain, and like in the fall there was like incredible colors there, and there was great places to hike. But other than that, like I just we had some woods behind our house, but other than that, like it wasn't I didn't like it there at all. Like I didn't and I ended up going back there and waiting tables in a restaurant in a hotel for about a year before I moved down to, or I guess it was after I came back from Atlanta. And so, but I didn't see anybody from high school and didn't, like that part of my life was over, right? But she came up to me at the bar and like she was a little bit drunk. And she was insisting that I was a year younger than her in school. So she had me as a person that was 1 year behind her. And I didn't argue with her because I don't care. Like, I was like, no, I graduated in 82. She's like, no, you were 83. I'm like, okay, you know more, like whatever. But she was a nice person. But clearly I could see she was still like her best days. She was one of those people that peaked in high school. And she was with this guy who she probably wouldn't have dated in high school. But, I think because of, her glory days and maybe they, knew each other. I don't know. Like, I didn't know what the guy came over and she was talking about, I think she must have dated a Hartford whaler or her sister. She had a younger sister who was, good looking, who was, I think kind of slutty. Didn't really know her. But, like, they both were complaining about the Hartford whalers and like them dumping girls or something. I didn't know what happened to her sister or her friends or what happened to her. And the guy came over and said something like he just walked over. He must have been listening to our conversation. He walked over and I knew him, right? Like I knew him, I at least talked to him in high school. We weren't friends or anything, but he had this fight. Well, so what happened was my best friend from high school was biracial, but like he called himself mulatto. And he was really much more of a white person than he was a black person. Like he grew up in suburbs. His mom was German. And he didn't, like all of his friends and his experiences was with, the white people. He was much more in the white community. And, he was into the town. He was into like suburbs. He was just, his dad had some kind of corporate job or whatever it was. He was making a lot of money. His dad was. And, he was a single dad with, two kids. My best friend had an older sister. And at some point he threw a beer at one of our friends. I don't know how that happened. And, this guy was always kind of obnoxious. It was kind of a joke. And he I guess soaked the guy because we were drunk. And this guy who's hanging out with this cheerleader now comes up to him and grabs him by the collar. And I could tell some of it was racial because of things he said afterwards or people he hung out with and some of the things he was saying during this interaction. And my best friend from high school was more together in terms of he had college plans and he had, he ended up going to Lehigh University to be an engineer and he was doing better in school and he was more focused and he had a future. And he was holding the mug in one hand and he was grabbing the guy's collar in the other. And there was like this, they're like they were going to fight, right? And, there's this, they were pushing back and forth. It went on for like a couple minutes. And then the other guy slapped him and slapped my friend and walked away. And my friend was like, like all night, he was like, I should have taken my beer mug. He had like a glass beer mug. It was like a keg party. And smashed the guy in the face. And I was like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. Like, I wasn't a person who, had sense of a future or long-term. I wasn't a long-term thinker. I did things maybe impulsively. But I knew that would have been like the police would have been involved, in a small town like that. And, certainly there could have been racial implications. Like I had a sense, like, I'm like, yeah, that might have felt good, but like it would have been bad, like if you had done that. And I was pretty cheerleader. And I was wondering if he was with this guy, she was with this guy, and she seemed like a nice Christian girl. But this guy was clearly somewhat racist, at least prejudiced, right? Because of things that I knew about him, like the things he said. So we're having this conversation. And I remember it because, like, I remember her being, like, stuck. Like, I didn't have a sense of people who peaked in high school. But then I started understanding that as a thing. Like, people who their best days were in high school. And then they still are connected to that high school, right? And so I had another interaction with another girl from my high school days, which I'll talk about later because it's, part of the story as it unfolds. And that was it. Like, I haven't thought about high school. I mean, I just, like sometimes I have memories of different things. But I've been having this thing lately where my life has been flashing before my eyes. A number of people have talked about this as well in the comment section, where I've watched a bunch of documentaries like the Pete Rose documentary, and I just watched the documentary about the Boston Red Sox comeback, and that was fairly recent compared to some of this other stuff. But things from my childhood have come back up, and just seeing things like just, going down memory lane, which I usually don't do. Like, I'm not a very sentimental person. And so anyways, this person appears on my Facebook thing. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Like, how do they even know that I have a connection? And so I looked at her page, and she's married to that guy. And I looked at him, and I'm like, Jesus, he's my age, and he looks horrible. And, just, gray hair and just old. Like, I wouldn't recognize these people if I saw them. And she was like she's a teacher there at, not the high school, I think it's like an elementary school. But they live in the same town. They love that town, and there are people who, clearly were, the high school was something they didn't even like move on from, right? People who high school, like they peak in high school and they're, in a town and that's like important to them and like this whole thing, which is like so not how I am, right? And so I start scrolling down her friend's feed because I know there's going to be other people from high school there because she's connected to them, right? She was fairly popular and people knew who she was. And a lot of these people live in their town their whole life, right? And so there was, I don't know, maybe 20, I don't know how many people, but there's various people. Some of my, I remember their name, but I couldn't remember what they looked like when they were younger. Some of them, I knew a little bit more. And it was a weird thing for me, like, because I'm so disconnected from, my youth and the people who were around when I was a kid, my family, I mean, my brother who I had contact, I haven't had contact with him for a couple of years because of the whole Dodgy debacle and all these things. And then the rest of my family, and then everyone else, my parents are dead. And I have one friend who calls me occasionally, watches my videos from a couple of those guys from my basketball days that was post-high school. But as far as I remembered these people, they were high school kids, so they were young. And a lot of the guys looked really old. Like I was kind of aware of how old I am. Like, it made me think about, because there's longevity runs in my family, as I've said. My grandparents lived into their 90s. My one grandmother lived almost to 100. My parents both lived into their 90s. And so, longevity just runs in my family. Everyone in my family, my siblings look much younger than people, average people their age. But I could tell that, some of these guys were really old. Some of them might not be alive that much longer. Then I realized, I bet there's lots of people I went to school with that are dead. Like there was a kid who was murdered. I knew the murderer. Like I smoked pot with the murderer. He had, there's this kid named Tim Sorgio. Tim Sorgio was like a real scumbag, and he was a senior who dated young girls, like freshman girls. And he was a senior when I was a freshman. And like he just had a bad reputation. I saw him a few times. Like I don't remember what he looks like now, but he had kind of long hair and he looked kind of like a scumbag. And when I went to take my driving test, I was a junior in high school, and the DMV was like a couple towns over. Like it was a town I had never been to. And the guy, my driving instructor, I wasn't that great a driver. Like I was borderline going to pass. And he goes, "Oh, you're from Simsbury? You know Tim Sorgio?" And I go, "Yeah, he's a real scumbag." just, I didn't think it through. The guy goes, yeah, he is. And I said, he's a real scumbag. He dates young girls, right? And he goes, yeah, he does. Like, I'm like, he must have dated this guy's daughter. So needless to say, I passed the test. And so there was a skinny kid that I had smoked pot with, and, I didn't think he was some violent kid. And he had bought cocaine from Tim Sorgio years after Tim Sorgio had left high school. So this was like later on, my junior year, my senior year. This kid, I think, was 1 year younger than me. And Tim Sorgio tried to rough him up because he didn't, owed him money. And the kid pulled out a knife and stabbed him like 100 times. There was another kid who died who hit, I think he was in my class. He was skiing, and he was a good skier, but not that good of a skier because he hit a tree and died. And there was a girl, Emery Lopez, that died when I was in first grade from leukemia. So I had some, reference point to people dying who were my age. I mean, that kind of was weird for me when I was a little kid because you never thought as a little kid somebody your age would be dead, right? And it's rare, right? It's less frequent than older people. But now I bet a bunch of the people I went to high school with are in really poor health or dying. Everyone seemed to be overweight. And a lot of the girls I went to high school with now, like I couldn't remember exactly what they looked like, but I knew they didn't have short Rachel Maddow haircuts that were blonde, dyed blonde. Like a number of them are like that now. And so that brings me to the other girl I saw. There's a girl I went to high school with who was an Italian girl, very skinny. And I remember her like always being sick. She was in a couple of classes of mine, and she always had like Kleenexes, and she must have had allergies or something. Like it was something that I noticed, and I didn't notice a lot. Like I said, in a daze. But she was somebody who was sickly. Looks like that Rocky Balboa from the Rocky movies, wife in the original Rocky, Talia Shire or somebody like that. But she had long black hair. And she came up to me in a bar, and I recognized her. And I don't know how much we interacted, but I knew her from a couple of my classes. And we had a kind of nice conversation. She was really kind of almost like a victim, like someone with like a lot of neuroses, like neurotic maybe. And she was talking about how like she was in college and she came home and she was dating some guy, and he walked in and she was having sex with her roommate. Like she walked in, she went back to her dorm room or something. Like I remember she like seemed to have some issues. And that's the last time I saw her. And she was friends with this cheerleader, on Facebook, and she now lives in Chicago, and she had short blonde hair, so she, was like completely different, and she was an actress. Said something about Second City or something. They have this Second City, actors group. I'm not sure what that is, but I kind of know. I've heard of it. And a lot of these people, had the town that I went to high school in their, their bio and or they went to that high school. A lot of them listed the high school, which I thought is interesting because I've lived so many places. The reason that you list things in your bio is that people who are looking for you that you didn't, haven't seen in years can find you. And like, I don't want that. Like, like, I mean, I don't care if they find me or not, but I'm not seeking them out and trying to interact with them because like, it's like a past life for me. Right. So like, I don't, these times I've lived in various places, I could list all these places that I've been, and maybe some people who, the people I got along with and just didn't keep in touch with, because there's people like that, that I have a good opinion of, and, good people. And I wouldn't mind finding out and catching up to see what's going on with them, which occasionally I do with my friend. But like, mostly the guy who contacts me from my basketball days, and he tells me about, all the other guys and what they're up to and, what's happening with them. But I've noticed whenever I do that, like, it's just these feelings come up. It just brings me back to what I felt like, what my condition was, it's like getting in contact with something that wasn't as good, like a person that I was then, that it was suckier to be me then, like, than it is now. Like, I'm much better off now. Like, if I'm peaking now, or I'm going to peak in the future, hopefully in the future, that's inevitably you want to peak as you get older, like in terms of you're evolving and you're changing and you're at your best as you get older, right? There are a lot of people who they don't develop much after high school or college or, whatever it is. Even as kids, they're, I don't want to say they're immature. Like some people freeze in their emotional development. Sometimes when they're abused or have trauma, there's, they stop evolving emotionally, and and that's a different sort of a thing. I'm talking about how like people, their best days were like, oh, I was happiest when I was in high school, or I was happiest when I was in college. Like people who think that way, and I mean that sucks, right? It sucks that your best days are behind you. Like your best days should be in front of you, in a sense, not physically. Certainly, you're not going to be, as physically active, but you should be better at the end of your life, right? In the movies and TV shows, they glorify high school, and people, have these, they switch bodies with their teenage kids, and these things, right? People wanting to go back and relive things, and they have regrets and would have done things differently, and would have taken chances, and would have, like all those things. It's just silly, because that time of life, everyone's stupid then. When you're a teenager, you're a dummy, and occasionally you'll find teenagers who find the love of their life and somehow are able to be married like 50 years. They date in high school, they get married, in high school or after high school, and they love each other, and they just are able to evolve together and have a good relationship for 50 years. And that's a remarkable thing, right? That's, an amazing thing for those people who are able to do that. And there's lots to be said for people marrying young and not going through a series of bad relationships and multiple marriages and getting damaged and getting, whatever kind of emotional baggage and trust issues and all the things that go with those kind of failed relationships. I mean, there's a lot to be said for these arranged marriages in India where people are able to, evolve together. But the most important thing is people's, spiritual evolution, where they evolve on the same spiritual level and they're into the same, there's a movement there, because people are, when you evolve spiritually, the growth can be exponential, and it's something that, you resonate together in these things. And like the whole, in terms of your energy, and people are, they have the same interests, which, in terms of their relationship to God is important, because your interests and your hobbies and the things that you're into come and go, and so people need to have things they like to do together. They have to have things that they enjoy doing together. Whatever it is, right? There's just people end up having different interests, and they sort of grow apart and things. Sometimes politically, even they lose their sense of like, they have different, people's beliefs grow into different directions, and then there's a distance or a gap between the people, right? Especially nowadays. But if there's like shared spiritual beliefs and movement, like that's something that can go on for eternity, right? Something that goes beyond this life and whatever it is. But anyways, I've just been having this stuff like where I'm very much aware of my past. Like different things have come up through just, like I said, watching these documentaries and some things I've had, even maybe some even dreams I've had. Like I'm saying, like my life is passing before my eyes, and I don't know if it's because we're about to go through some, major shift or something personal. I've just had thoughts and memories about things, and just, I haven't thought about in years, and it's been that kind of a time, and like this, I don't know what's, again, causing this kind of phenomenon, but there's something going on, like in my eternal world. I'm reading this thing in the Journey series where there's, I'm talking about the Journey series, where I'm rereading this preceptor book, and, and that's been something I haven't done in, I don't know, 15, 20 years or something. And so it's just a lot of things like that where I'm thinking about things in a different way, and, but the past is coming back up a little bit. But anyways, this is going to be continued on with the Thanksgiving Day message, which will be coming out on Thanksgiving. So whenever this video's up, a couple days from now. And let's wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. This power bottle definitely reporting from the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.